It's time for another edition of your favorite podcast theme music.
What you say? That you only meant well.
Jason Derulo.
What you say?
What does George say?
That it's all for the best.
Okay. It's 1 month. There's 1 month of this terrible theme song. And so if you got a better idea for like a theme song, if I just use generic music, probably getting copyright strike every time I'm using this, but I'm adding some, lyrics. So maybe it's falls into fair use. And what I'm going to be addressing to today is the barrier of time, which is a question I have received a million times. And I have some viewpoints on this, on how we utilize our time, because you can't add time, all right? No matter what you do, you can't add time to the day. And definitely we don't want to actually try that. But as you know, this is for the last month of January 2025. I've been trying this. I'm going to see how it goes. I've been taking viewer questions. So if you have a question that you'd love me to, or you would like me to respond to on leadership, on education, on teaching and learning, please feel free to throw it in the comments. There is also a Google form that will link the people that are actually, I'm answering their questions. I'm sending them a book, signing a book. Maybe they don't want to when it's signed, whatever. But I would love to answer your questions. I think this is a really great way for me to really kind of think about what is going on in education and address things that people need directly, but also give me some great ideas for content. So I'm glad to share a book. But the reason why I encourage you to share comments, and please like and subscribe, that's cool. Cool thing to do as well. I'm really trying to grow this channel this year. That is one of my big 2025 goals, is because when you share the questions below, you might not get an answer from me, but you might get an answer from someone else in the profession. And I think that's where this becomes really valuable. Are we using these spaces to learn from each other, to build each other up? And I would love to learn from you. And I think when I get your questions, it helps me kind of push my own thinking and really kind of articulate some ideas that I can share with others in the future. But also I want to learn, what are your ideas? All of these things I'm sharing are just perspectives. They're just opinions. I don't believe that anything's fact, but just kind of my perspective on sharing. And as I said, I'm going to be talking about the idea of time today, and how do we actually get over this barrier of time. And this is from Lisa, and I know where Lisa's from, but I want to say Lisa from Canada, because that was like one of my favorite things when people would introduce me, especially in the US when I lived in Canada, as George from Canada. Like, there's no cities. It's just a giant country, and we could just refer like it's saying, George from the United States. We probably people don't say that. They're probably a little bit more specific. But so Lisa from Canada, thanks for the question today. And you'll be getting a book very soon. You probably get the book before you even hear this podcast, because I am sharing this at the end of January. And here is Lisa's question, which is going to be a question that so many of you listening to, no matter your role, will have as well, some variation of this. A pattern I've been noticing among my educator colleagues is their frustrated comments on the barrier of time. Our system has began an assessment initiative, and although it has been well received thus far, based on feedback from the teacher advocates, I foresee a plateau or even decline on our learning journey due to the previously mentioned lack of time reality. What are some of your suggestions, recommendations to overcome this barrier obstacle? Lisa from Canada, from BC, British Columbia. And I won't give the specific city. This is something that is a really important consideration with education. When you look at the decade that you went to school, not as a teacher, when you went to school as a student, it does not matter the decade. The time frame was very similar, right? You might be from 9 to 3, 8:30 to 3, I don't know, whatever. The demands on teachers are going up and up and up, and they're not getting support. And so how is that a sustainable model that you're saying within the same time frame of the school day that we've always had, we just are expecting more and more out of you? So that's something that we have to address right away. And I'm going to kind of talk about utilizing this and how to kind of think about this in a different context. So I remember one time I was doing a professional learning cohort, and one of the people said, and this is a great correction for myself by someone else. We were talking about, people being reluctant to embrace change. And somebody said this: teachers aren't scared of change. They are scared of wasting time on things that have no impact on student learning. Such a powerful quote from this teacher. And I wish I could share who this was. I don't know. I don't know their name, but I just want to make sure you know it's not mine. But I thought it was a really powerful quote. It made me really think about, I think we all want to grow. We all want to get better, but something is not feasible. There's certain things that I would love to do in my life. I just don't have the time to do them, no matter how bad I want to do. And so even if you see every initiative and you're like, that one's good, that one's good, that one's good, it doesn't mean you can do it, because we are limited in our time. And so we have to be really thoughtful, about which ones we actually utilize and which ones that we have to do. And do they make a benefit, or are they just cyclical, right? Are they just something, trend of the day? We embrace it, dive into it, and then actually, 2-3 years later, it's kind of still there, but we go on to something else, and we never saw it really making an impact on students as well. And one of the things I share is that if you want to know if your professional learning is effective, questions are like, what will you do differently because of today, and how will it impact student learning, right? That's really only the two questions. If it doesn't impact student learning, why are we doing it? So I think having those two questions is really, really crucial. So based on that idea and understanding we cannot do everything, no matter how valuable it is, one of the things that we have to consider is that if you are trying to add something, so when I'm reading Lisa's question about this assessment initiative, great, right? We really want, Kelly Wilkins, my mentor, she used to say to me this, and I thought it was really powerful, that assessment drives our teaching, not the other way around. So for example, if you hear somebody saying, like teachers are just teaching to the test. Well, is all you share test scores? Then of course they're going to teach the test, because if you're saying like over and over again, test scores are really, really important. Why are teachers teaching to the test? Well, because you keep focusing on the test scores. That's why. So that assessment drives this. So I think the idea of rethinking how we do assessment, I wrote a series on assessment and rethinking it. I'll actually link that down below. Is really, really an important consideration to actually have. But that being said, what went away, right? What's the thing? If we're focusing on this, you can't just say we're now focusing on this. You have to be explicit in saying, what do we actually take off, our plate? And teachers don't actually have full plates. They have full platters, and they are overflowing. They're way too big to deal with in the first place, and they're just absolutely overwhelming. So anytime that you are focusing on adding something to the plate, whether a new initiative, a new thing, what are you explicitly saying? Hey, now that we're doing this, we are no longer doing that. If you cannot say it, do not add, no matter how valuable you think it is, because it is not a sustainable practice, right? If you're continuously adding stuff because you think it's good, well, it doesn't matter if it's good, if it's overwhelming and people can't handle the load, can't handle this too, right? So that's one way to consider, is that this sounds great that there's an assessment initiative. What has been taken off the plate? And what was really interesting, years ago, I asked this question because I wrote about the idea of less is more in the innovator's mindset, that we actually have to actually do less better, not try to do everything. And one of the questions I asked a group of people is that, okay, now that this is identified and we really need to take things off the plate, what would you take off the plate? What would you, staff, right in front of me, what would you say we no longer need to do? And the teaching staff, they struggle with it, which I thought was really interesting. I thought they were going to jump up and share 10 ideas. Like, we don't need to do this. We don't do this. But, we all find some discomfort. So it's a really tough conversation, but one that you should try to have. Hey, we're trying this initiative. What do you think we should no longer do? What should we no longer focus on and put our time and energy in? Because you got 30 minutes, for whatever. So that 30 minutes, guess what? You're still going to be 30 minutes, and you only got 24 hours in a day. You can't expand the hours in a day. It is what it is. So anytime you're wanting to add something, be explicit about what you are willing to subtract. The other thing that I want to share is understanding time is the constant between all of us, right? So it does not matter the school or district. We all have 24 hours in a day, 365 days in a year. Why do some schools do better than others? And I don't think it's just focusing on less. It's actually, how do we utilize our time? How do we actually view our time and get the most bang for a buck during that time? And I'll share an example that I've used for years. And, there's some relevance to this today, but we have to think about it differently. I remember teachers would do journals, right? And there's a lot of teachers probably still doing written journals, for the younger early years classes. And what is the point of the journals, right? It is to actually, improve reading and writing. Prove reading and writing. All right. So the practice that I saw for years and years and years was a student would actually write in their little journal. They'd write in it, and really awesome teachers, they do everything to help their kids. They'd have 20, 25 kids in their grade 1 class. They would take those 20, 25 journals home with them on a weekend. And their goal is to write back to every child, right? So you can write back and see what they're actually doing, right? And they might have a little glass of red wine as they're writing. Don't spill wine. Don't spill wine on the journal because you don't want to know teacher drinks. So I want you to think about that process. The teacher wants to improve reading and writing in the classroom, and then takes 20, 25 journals home, writes every kid. Who is actually getting the biggest improvement in their reading and writing? And you all know the answer is the teacher. It's a 25-to-1 ratio. They're writing 25 times to the 1 time for the student. So let's think about differently our time. So one of the things I actually encouraged was using like a blogging program, or something that you could use with technology. And instead of actually having the student write once in a journal, what you could do is actually say, hey, you need to write once in the journal, but once you're done, you need to comment to 5 other students in the class. They comment to 5 other students. So now I already got them writing 6 times. Okay. So they're writing 6. I bumped up the ratio. So they're writing 6 times, but then they're so excited they get a comment, and now they're also writing to each other. They're writing back responses. They're also learning how to communicate online, understanding that, you don't understand how people are perceiving this. I'm not saying you do this all the time, but actually and then you choose, I'm going to write to these 5 kids this time, these 5 kids this time. So now the ratio is way different, way more writing for the student than there is for the teacher. And there's so many ways you can actually do this. Now you can you can do that with the paper journal too, right? You can actually say like, hey, you give this to 5 of your friends, give it to 5 people in the classroom, whatever, and write to each other. So you're trying to actually get them to read each other's stuff, write each other's stuff, and connecting. And this is and I'm paraphrasing this quote, is John Spencer and AJ Giuliani, their book, Empower. I'll also link that down below. Wonderful book. Full disclosure, my company published it, but it was the first book we ever published. Absolutely amazing. Really love the idea, and it's such an easy read, but it's really an empowering read, for lack of a better term. And they share, paraphrasing, what are you doing for students that they could be doing for themselves, right? Are we taking away so much of the learning because we view it as teaching, right? And could students be actually more in that process of what they're doing? And I'll give you an example. Let's say you are a teacher and let's say you teach math. So you're teaching a math class, and you are going to spend hours of your time finding like some supplemental resource on the concept of probability. So you're going to find a video under 5 minutes, because you're not going to watch. Who was going to watch a 10-minute video on probability, right? So you find that video, you show it to your kids, show it to your students, and then a bunch of them have I have no idea. So could you flip this a little bit? Could you actually say, hey, I want you to find this video. I want you to find this video. I want it to be under 5 minutes long. Get some criteria. It has to explain these concepts. And I want you to explain to me why you explain those concepts well. So now you actually have the students, finding information, analyzing, is this good information, giving them some constraints and, criteria. And what you have maybe viewed as teaching is actually now learning you're transferring to students. Yeah, they're learning about probability through the process, but they're also finding information. You're not limited to only teach with this curriculum. You can go beyond it as well. And there's so many different skill sets that you can actually have through that process. So I think that's something that we have to think about, is how are we actually transferring some of this? I'm not saying don't do direct instruction. I'm not saying don't share any content, but are there little ways that you spend within the school day where you can actually have students doing a lot of the learning which you view as teaching, and kind of turning that over? So I think really how we look at time is not how do we add more, it's how do we use it better? How do we use the time currently? And that, that focuses on less is more, right? Focusing on doing few things better, asking when we add, what are we subtracting? And then really just how do we transfer this over to students. So that is my response to Lisa's question. I would love your thoughts. How are you, and like maybe in the comments down below, I'd love to hear it. How are you actually doing something that you used to do and actually making better use of the time than you were before? Because I know this could become a very valuable resource if people actually wrote those comments down below, like, hey, I used to do this. Here's what I do. Here's why it's a better use of my time. Don't talk about adding time. Talk about how you utilize the time that you have, and not going like where we don't actually have any social life, where we don't actually have anything extra that we can do. So just some thoughts on another edition of
What you say?
What Does Joe Say?
That you only meant well.
Jason Derulo.
'Cause you did.
To your questions, what are your questions? I don't know what I am singing. All right. I hope you got something out of this. I love these. I would love more questions. Please feel free to share them down below. Share this with other people and maybe get their comments as well. Thanks so much for being here. I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care.